When you are starting a product or service-based business, it is so important to start doing contracts from the get-go so that you can protect yourself and the client that you're working with. Hey there, my name is Bianca. I'm a content strategist and creator for small businesses and entrepreneurs. And before going into content creation full-time, I started my business as a virtual assistant. When you're first starting out a business, it can be so hard to figure out where to start, what you need, and what you have to do in terms of a legal perspective. Now, this is a disclaimer towards this whole entire video. I am not a lawyer, and so I cannot give you, obviously, legal advice, but this is what has worked for me in terms of creating my contracts. I was lucky enough to be able to work with a coaching cohort when I first started my business, and they were able to give me a lot of resources and tips on how to start and create that contract. I was able to get a template, and through working with a lot of different clients, these are the main things that I found that was super important in terms of building your contract. So without further ado, let's get started. So why do you need a contract? It basically explains in legal terms what you and your client are expected to do in this sort of transaction. This includes all of the activities that you're hired to do, the number of hours that you're expected to do, and the payment that you're expected to get in this as well. There are usually two ways of performing this type of service-based work. You can either do an independent contractor work, so working hourly and then basically invoicing the hours that you worked, or you can do a retainer-based sort of contract where you are specifically doing a certain project and the client has to pay in advance of that project. And if not all the work is complete, it can be refunded afterwards. So there are really two different ways of doing it, and it really depends on what you want to do as a service, especially if you have something that's a little bit more specific. A retainer-based contract could be a really great option for you because it allows you to know exactly what to expect monthly in terms of income. So no matter if you're doing an independent contractor work like I did, or if you're doing a retainer-based work, we're going to be looking at 5 different elements that you should have and are super important in your contract. Number 1 in your contract is obviously outlining what kind of service that you are providing. So you're obviously, in terms of being an independent contractor, you're going to be outlining that you are not an employee to this client, that you're an independent contractor, and these are the services that you will be providing. Especially if you have a specific service that you're providing, it's really great and important to note what is inside the scope of your work and what is outside the scope of your work. So I'll give you an example. If you are a copywriter and you're doing specifically blog copy, you want to mention that within what you provide as a service and what that price entails is specifically blog copy. So in your scope of work, you will be providing blog copy services, but outside of your scope of work, let's say you're not including caption copy or social media copy. So those are really distinguished things. And if someone would want some, captions, then perhaps your services will be more expensive. So really outlining the difference between the two so that your client knows exactly what they can expect from you. Number 2 in your must-haves are your payment terms. So clearly outlining the rate that you're offering. So let's say if it's an hourly rate or a fixed rate, the number of times you will be invoicing and the frequency, and also the way that they will be paying, either, sending out an invoice and they can pay through bank transfer or credit card or whatnot. So clearly outlining how and when you will get paid. In the payment information as well, you can also talk about ahead of time your payment terms. So if this is a client where they would like to do net 30, meaning that once you invoice them, they can spend 30 days before the payment, or if it's 24 hours after the invoice is sent, or if it's a week or 3 days, whatever you decide to do with your client, always make sure that you have the payment terms in there, because if they are late, you can also put in your contract a late fee. So in my contract per se, if we have agreed upon, paying within the first 3 days, after 3 days, I can add in a 10% late fee. This ensures that if you have a client who tends to be a little bit late on payment, then you yourself are protected, meaning that you can add in a late fee, or you can add in to your contract that if a payment is not made, that you can stop providing those services after a certain amount of time. Number 3 in your must-have is outlining that you will not be disclosing any confidential information. This one is super important for your client as well. As a virtual assistant or any type of contractor, you will be getting a lot of private information. So that could be logins, it could be client information, it could be marketing lists, so on and so forth. You absolutely want to make sure that in the contract that you will have this confidential information that is enclosed and that you will not be allowed to disperse that information or use it for any other client. Number 4 on my list is a termination clause. So this allows both parties to end the contract with a prior written notice. So in my contract, that is 14 days, but it can be however long that you prefer. But 14 days is a great way to make sure that you can tie everything up with a bow and make sure that you're paid for what you've done already. And then number 5 on my list is kind of a speed round. So there are 2 ones that I think that are very important to note, and it also depends on what type of business that you're running. But one that I really found that was great was adding a portfolio use section. So outlining that anything that is made public that I have helped create or I've created for a client, that I can use it on my personal portfolio, that I can show to future clients, or that I can show on my website. I found that really helpful so that I can really show my evolution of how I work and what I was able to do for other clients. Always make sure though that you're sharing information that is now open to the public, and that's not something that's maybe behind the scenes. You want to make sure that it's something that's like kind of out in the open, but a portfolio use kind of section is really, really great, especially for a creative. And then the last one that I want to note is your availability. So this also kind of outlines and kind of sets a precedent on when you will be available, and you will be able to have more of that like work-life harmony. A lot of people have kind of trouble, especially with contractors, of different types of times that people are available. So in my contract, I say that I will be able to answer Monday to Friday and have a 24-hour response time, and that I'll let them know, as soon as possible if I'm going on vacation, and we can move our hours around. But the available time for them to reach out to me and that I'll be able to answer is Monday to Friday. So that way I don't get a ton of messages on my weekends or in the evenings, and we're able to kind of keep that very professional Monday to Friday relationship. And that way I can also schedule my schedule accordingly and kind of have weekends. For my personal experience, this doesn't mean that I don't work on weekends, but it also really helps me in terms of clients not waiting for me to do something specific on the weekends. So that's why I like to keep it in my contract just in case. And those were my must-haves, so I hope that you enjoyed. As previously mentioned, I had a lot of help with the help of resources and templates, and I know that there are so many great ones online that you can either purchase or you can have with a certain platform. A lot of platforms are able to help with this, but these are the main ones in terms of virtual assisting that I found really, really important. And if you are doing something that is even more pushed or even more specific, or you're trying to grow your business, I would highly, highly recommend reaching out to a lawyer, and they'll be able to cater your contracts accordingly. And so that's been really, really helpful. Another thing that I found helpful is that a lot of lawyers now do some templates as well, and so they'll be able to kind of outline everything that you need. There are a ton of really great resources. I hope you found this helpful. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.